should be registered with FARA. This is what FARA is where there's gray area, where it's an American representing a foreign country. Yes. Let's look and see if you're getting any money from that foreign country. Are you a dual citizen with that foreign country? Are you being directed by, for instance, is Netanyahu speaking to your group, advising you on your next move? Are you getting money from the military industrial complex? Because to understand APAC, I think it's easiest to model them as a military industrial lobby. Like, their biggest thing is,
what's going on, everybody? Today, I'm going to react to about 12 clips. I think I counted them all. 12 clips of Thomas Massie talking about the Israel lobby to Tucker Carlson in what I believe is one of the most important journalistic interviews of the year that will probably be underreported and underlooked. So we're going to look at that stuff. God bless you guys. Give me a thumbs up in the chat and for the algorithm on the video. And the show starts now. I got to focus because I got lots of clips to play. And as you know, I'm the producer of the show. Appreciate you guys. God bless you. Dream Rare Podcast starts now.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on? We got Jennifer, Eddie, Maggie, Justin, Shades, Mar, Romy, Abnormally. Sorry, I can never see your whole name. It's kind of covered up. Brooke, Lisa. Appreciate you guys for being here. So I've not been shy about it. My favorite member of Congress is Thomas Massie. I think he's the most honest. I think he's the most pragmatic. I tweeted the other day and posted it on Facebook. If the Republican Party really cared about doing anything that they said, they would give Thomas Massie a high-level position regardless of who wins. But let's watch these clips because he talked about the Israel lobby for at least about 8 minutes, and I have those clips here, to Tucker Carlson. And I want to say this as a disclaimer before I play the clips. Whether you're super pro-Israel, regardless of your race or religion, maybe you're Christian and this is what your church tells you to do. Maybe you're not. Maybe you have a feeling like you want the war to end. Maybe you want Israel to get all the hostages back, or whatever your stance is on Israel and America and Palestine. I almost said question, but it's not a question. I want to say demand, but I'm also not demanding it. My thought is give this a listen and a consideration because I think nobody really knows how the Israel lobby works in Congress. And no matter how pro-Israel or critical of the Israel lobby you are, shouldn't you know what they're doing and how it's unlike any other country? I think you should. And let's play the clips. I got 12. Let's go.
Because there's a lot of pressure in Congress to vote for these things. And our Republican leadership thinks they're so smart. You know, we're in an election year and they want to bring up issues. They want to put them in front of Congress and make us vote on them, whether they're going anywhere in the Senate or not. And they want to split the Democrats. They want to show that Republicans are united and then split the Democrats. That's one of the reasons they do it. Another reason they do it is there's a foreign interest group called APAC that's, you know, got the ear of this current speaker and demanded 16 votes in April on Israel or the Middle East. We haven't had 16 votes in April on the United States in Congress.
So I like this point that's being made by Thomas Massie. He talks about APAC. He's going to explain what that is. But here's the issue that a lot of people on the right, I can't speak for the left because I don't know what they're doing, but a lot of people on the right that call themselves America First. The problem they have is that the American politicians like Mike Johnson, like Lindsey Graham, sometimes like Trump, like a lot of pretty much all Republicans, but Thomas Massie, it's not that they like Israel. It's not that they just funnel hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars to Israel over the course of the last couple of decades. That's something else. But it's the fact that they seem to prioritize Israel before America. And Thomas Massie at the end there, he said, we haven't even had 14 votes for America in America, but we've had 14 votes for Israel. So what is APAC? That's what Tucker Carlson asks, and Thomas Massie explains it. Let's watch.
So what's APAC?
APAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And they didn't start out as a PAC in the sense of a political action committee, but now they have a political action committee. Ostensibly, it's a group of Americans who lobby on behalf of Israel. They're for anything Israel. And they're a very effective lobbying group. They get in there. They try to get me to write a white paper as a candidate, for instance, for Congress. They almost get
on what?
On Israel. And I wouldn't do it. And they said, why? And I'm like, I don't do homework for lobbyists, right? I'm like, I didn't like writing term papers at college. I'm not writing one for you.
What did they say?
So even if you're pro-Israel, don't you think it's a little bit odd that as a candidate, he didn't even get elected yet? He's being asked by a lobbying group that lobbies on behalf of a foreign country to essentially write a white paper. It's a little interesting. To be honest, I didn't even know this. I knew they had extreme power. I knew that pretty much everybody in the Republican Party, except for Thomas Massie, seems to play along. But I had no idea they did this to candidates. That's why I believe this is one of the more interesting interviews that I've seen this year. So let's play another clip.
They said, oh, well, here, just copy Rand Paul's term paper and put your name on it. We'll accept that. And I'm like, no, I'm still not cribbing somebody else's homework.
I'm going to stop it there and I'm going to play that clip back. What? So Rand Paul did one of these white papers and they said, probably like your buddies with Rand Paul, he's Ron Paul's son. Why don't you just use his? Why would you have to hand in a white paper for a lobbying group? And why would you just copy Rand Paul's? Is this even pro-Israel people? Isn't this a little odd for the American Congress? No, I'm sure a lot of people get it here, but let's keep watching.
They said, oh, well, here, just copy Rand Paul's term paper and put your name on it. We'll accept that. And I'm like, no, I'm still not cribbing somebody else's homework to do homework. I'm not turning in my homework for you. And what you're laughing, but you know what? I bet I may be the only Republican in Congress who hasn't done homework for APAC. And it's just what it is. It's conditioning. They want you to do something very simple and benign, and for them, they don't really grade your term paper. They just want to know that you'll do something for them. And if you'll do something for them as a candidate, you're more likely to do something for them as a congressman when you get in there.
So they're trying to get candidates that aren't congressmen yet, or congresswomen, or congress trans men, or whatever they're doing in there nowadays, to write some sort of white paper thing for them. And then they know that if you're willing to do that, you're probably willing to do other things. Someone on Facebook says, I think Anomaly is working for George Soros, typing in all caps. Of course, I'm not going to blame boomers for this, but here's just a thought. Maybe listen to the stream, learn something new, and then go vote for Trump. I don't understand what you're not getting here, but let's continue.
So my rift started out in 2012 when I refused to turn in an Israel term paper.
And how did they respond to that?
Well, they kind of got in my race a little too late there in the beginning, and because it was hard to tell that I was actually going to win. And when they saw I was going to win, that's when they tried to get me to do the term paper. They didn't have a political action committee at the time. They couldn't spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars against me at that time. It was just sort of like a whisper campaign to try to, hey, don't vote for him, blah, blah, blah.
That's why.
Because at that point, they sensed I wouldn't do what they wanted when I got
But what did
Congress.
they whisper against you? What were they saying about you?
So he's explaining if you don't do what APAC says that they want, that they start to kind of maneuver against you politically. I'm going to try to be as respectful as possible. I probably shouldn't be reading comments in the middle of this stream so I could get through it. But Lisa on Facebook is like, Thomas Massie's a Republican. Do you want him to vote for Biden? Not trying to be a dick, because I have 1.6 million followers on Facebook. It's been great to me. There's a lot of awesome people on there, but some of the dumbest people are on there. I'm not saying every, but there's dumb people on TikTok and Instagram, but it's like, Lisa, have you ever considered zipping your lips for like 20 minutes and learning something? Why would I want Thomas Massie to vote for Joe Biden? What does that have to do with anything? He's on Tucker Carlson. He's a registered Republican. He's probably one of the most loyal Republicans. He's one of the only, if not the only Republican that saw through the pandemic and told the truth about it in March. And it's like, most people, they poo-poo out of their behinds. I'm going to use children terms. Most people poo-poo out of their behinds, but a lot of you poo-poo out of your mouth. You're like pooping out of your mouth, and it's like blah, 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 and it's just like gross. It's like, shut up and learn something. Go vote for Trump. Go vote all Republican. Of course, I don't want Thomas Massie to vote for Joe Biden. Thomas Massie would never vote for Joe Biden. Thomas Massie doesn't like Joe Biden. Got to treat like 60-year-olds like they're 5-year-olds, like they're little doo-doo poopy in your little diaper. It's like Thomas Massie, the Republican who's not voting for Joe Biden, is explaining to you how the Israel lobby works. Are you 5? I shouldn't even read comments because it kind of throws off the whole stream, but it's like, it's astronomical how stupid some people are on Facebook. And I'm not saying there's not dumb people on YouTube too, but like the IQ of some of these like older people on Facebook is literally like sub 5. It's like talking to a caveman that's 1 year old that shits their pants. It's unbelievable. Like, what part of this stream says that Thomas Massie is going to vote for Joe Biden? So dumb, these people. It's insane. I think you're working for George Soros. You're one IQ above a caveman that got dropped on its head when it's a kid. Anyway, let's try not to let the Facebook boomers ruin the live stream like they ruined the country for the last 50 years. Anyway, let's play the clip.
Well, they would do it through, for instance, churches, evangelical churches. They've got an organization called Christians United for Israel, where they've sort of co-opted evangelicals. People think it's a grassroots movement in Kentucky. It's actually a top-down movement from APAC, so that people who aren't even Jewish will feel like they've got to support Israel, no matter what. And even if it's a secular state that funds abortions, they, just sort of forget that part, and we've got to fund Israel. So they have networks. So it's more than just about the money.
It's an interesting point he said there before I played the next 7 clips. People don't realize the politics in Israel sometimes. Not everybody, a lot of people do, but a lot of the like Zionist, Republican Christians, like they're so like, it's like, here, take everything from me and do whatever you want, and I'll be critical of America, but I have no thought about you because I think that they told me that I have to do this in order to get to heaven. It's like, it's so wild. But Thomas Massie is kind of pulling the curtain back on the political side and telling you, pretty much every Republican except for him seems to be under their thumb. And here's the interesting part. Every Republican besides Thomas Massie played along to the pandemic, essentially. And I'm not saying those two are correlated, but it's like Thomas Massie, in my view, I've studied politics for 7 years now, 8 years, like almost every single day of my life. I've come to the conclusion that he's the only person in Congress that's not controllable. I don't think there's 5. I don't think there's 10. Matt Gaetz votes good on stuff. Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene. These are people I like better than your average person. But if I could tell you the truth and look at you in the face and you said, Anomaly, which congressmen do you think are totally authentic, totally vote the way they actually think things, and they're not controlled by lobbyists at all or public perception? I literally think Thomas Massie is the only person in Congress that actually does what's right, explains why he's doing it, and sees through all this stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence. Just like I don't think it's a coincidence when major donors give hundreds of millions of dollars to both sides and then both sides pass certain policy. Some people would call that a hateful conspiracy theory. Others would call it reality. When Big Pharma pays off Democrats and Republicans and they both sell the vaccine, I don't think it's coincidental. I think it's pay to play in politics. In fact, I know it is. For some reason, people haven't figured that out yet because some people, I guess their IQ is like sub 5. So you explain this stuff and they go, what do you want me to vote for Joe Biden then? No, I hope you never vote for Joe Biden. Why would you vote for Joe Biden? Who's telling you? You get what I'm saying? You try to explain how politics works. People are like, but Obama sucks. If Obama sucks, that means the red team must be really, really gooder than them. Yeah. And, I used to think that way when I was 4, and then I grew up. When you give things to like a baby and you're like, put the circle in the circle, put the square in the square, and you put the triangle in the triangle, and they put it in the box, and like babies can figure it out in 5 minutes. You give that to most 55-year-olds and they're like, I don't know which hole it goes in. It's like, we could tell. Anyway, here's the last part of that clip. Thomas Massie explains more about the Israel lobby to those who actually care. Clearly not most of Facebook. Anyway.
Now, to your point, they should be registered with FARA. This is what FARA is where there's gray area, where it's an American representing a foreign country. Yes. Let's look and see if you're getting any money from that foreign country. Are you a dual citizen with that foreign country? Are you being directed by, for instance, is Netanyahu speaking to your group, advising you on your next move? Are you getting money from the military industrial complex? Because to understand APAC, I think it's easiest to model them as a military industrial lobby. Their biggest thing is.
So he talks about saying Israel should register to FARA. A lot of people think that that's a scary thing to say because there's a lot of quote unquote conspiracy theories going around that, politicians have been, let's just say, not treated well because they've mentioned that or suggested that. There's a lot of theories there. I think Candace Owens posted it a couple weeks ago and it got a lot of attention and, a lot of love and a lot of hate from both sides. But Thomas Massie's trying to explain that's what the foreign, you don't want Russia or China or Japan or even Canada or Germany or any country. You don't want any country to supersede your interests, but there's only one that seems like it's above that. And it's Israel. I think to anybody with half a brain has figured this out now. With that being said, I try to explain this to people that are pro-Israel. If you go to Israel and you want to serve in the Knesset, which is their version of Congress, they don't allow dual citizens. So in Israel, if you're Russian Israeli, or you're American Israeli, or you're German Israeli, or whatever, you're a dual citizen, they make you give up your other passport in order to serve Israel because they've determined you can't serve two masters. If you want to serve Israel and serve our people, then you get rid of your other citizenship and you are loyal to America. In America, not only does that not happen, but you get smeared as anti-Semitic by the press and lobbyist groups if you figure out that there's dozens, if not hundreds of people in media and politics that have two passports and seemingly have more loyalty to another country. So instead of having the rules that Israel has for their people, what we have in America are, IHRA, anti-Semitism laws, which say that it's anti-Semitism now by law in multiple states and in schools and all over the country to even suggest that someone might have dual loyalty. So just to wrap it up before we move on, in Israel, you're not allowed to have dual citizenship because they don't want you serving in their government unless you get rid of your other passport. In America, not only can you have another passport, but there's actually laws on the book in America to call people hateful who are suggesting that you might have loyalty to another country. It's interesting, right? Anyway, let's play another clip.
They want more equipment, more military equipment from the United States going to Israel. In fact, when they used to be allowed in my office, the argument they would make is, we're just stimulating the U.S. military industrial complex because every single penny of the $3.8 billion that they nominally get, now they're getting way more than that, but that Israel nominally gets goes to U.S. military contractors. Now, that didn't make me warm and fuzzy, okay? But that is their argument. And if you notice what they advocate for, I think sometimes they advocate for things that even Israelis wouldn't advocate for.
I believe that.
They would, I think, be okay.
So he's going to go on and say that, even APAC, in Thomas Massie's perspective, they advocate for things that even Israelis don't necessarily like. And I find something interesting when it comes to the American Zionist on both sides, but I would say the Republican Party is more Zionist. I mean, politically, the Democrats and the Republicans are both extraordinarily Zionist, but Republicans are more so. But the base of Democrats are not, but the politicians are, and that pisses them off. That's why a lot of them won't vote. That's why I think Donald Trump's probably going to win this next election. With that being said, the Republican Party always wants to push it further. And I noticed in America, which is fascinating because I read Israeli news, I follow certain trends and stuff. I try to, pay attention. I've noticed that Republican politicians like Mike Johnson, they're more pro-Israel than even like Israeli media and certain, people in Israel. They'll protest their government sometimes because they don't want to lose rights. And in America, all the Republicans are like, and most of the Democrats, they're like, nothing to see here. You're just being hateful. And it's like, it's almost like Republicans are more in the bag for a foreign government than even the people are that, their whole existence, or at least their nation, depends on, their government. It's fascinating stuff. And I think a lot of Republicans are starting to figure this out. I would say it's becoming like I follow certain Instagram pages that are normie that annoy the shit out of me, but I just like to kind of have a gauge of like what people are saying. And I feel like on Twitter, the pendulum has swung. Most people figured this stuff out. And the people that want to cover it up or act stupid about it, they're the unpopular ones on Twitter, which is why I'm sure, you know, it's not, people are not thrilled with the direction of Twitter. Some are, some aren't. On Instagram, it's a little bit mixed, but what I noticed, like I follow this page, their name is Typical Liberal, and Typical Liberal is like a normie Trump. Like I remember pushed Ukrainian propaganda for 2 weeks during the Ukraine war, pushed Israel-Palestine propaganda for 2 weeks. Like he acts like he's so like pro-Trump and I'm so different from the rhinos, but he's just like constantly posting like really generic content and he's not always accurate. But anyway, he posted something about, I don't know if it was Memorial Day or maybe the D-Day anniversary recently. And, you know, most of the comments were starting to they were like, hey, our kids are dying for Israel and you're a shill. And I just started to notice, like, even on Instagram 3 years ago, nobody was having this conversation. Now, most people have figured this stuff out. And I'm not trying to be rude, but it seems like the only group that hasn't figured this stuff out seems to be Facebookers over the age of 50. Like Instagram's figuring it out, Twitter's figuring it out. I'm sure the other apps are figuring it out, but like anybody on Facebook, it's like they're completely oblivious of the conversation that everyone's having. And the conversation that everyone's having is the fact that both parties are essentially so under the Israel lobby that supersedes American interests. And I think that's the part that I can't speak for everybody because there's some dickheads out there that suck, but I'm noticing the trend because millions upon tens of millions of people on both sides, but mostly on the right for this context, they're figuring out that the Israel lobby seems to have Republicans so under control that Republicans don't seem like they can get anything done for America. They promise you a wall. And even Lindsey Graham said, you're not getting any money in Israel until we get a wall. And I was like, dude, Lindsey Graham sucks, but that's interesting. Like, wow, Lindsey Graham's kind of like putting his foot down. He's like, hey, we'll give you money, Israel, but we need our wall. All it took was Speaker Mike Johnson, a tragedy, and a couple months to go by, and all of a sudden we don't get our wall. So what does it say that they could send tens of billions of dollars to Israel, $50+ billion to Ukraine, I forget how much, and then 10 billion or 7 billion or whatever to Taiwan, however much it was. It's almost $100 billion that they could send to foreign countries, but they can't fix our border. And we actually have a majority in one of the branches of government. It means that our representatives aren't serving us. And I want to say this before I move on. People, I'm not asking you, for those who are really slow and dumb on Facebook, I'm just being honest. I'll say stuff later. But anyway, I'm not saying not to vote for Trump. Go vote for Trump. Wear the hat, cheer, watch Sean Hannity, watch Dan Bongino. Do what you got to do. I don't care. Vote for Trump. Makes sense. Get it. But you have to understand that if you see politics through Trump versus the deep state, you're missing a lot of the equation. Like a lot of what's going on even swallows him up. And it's not to say to blame him for everything or he's the problem. It's just like the problems aren't going to get fixed until you're paying attention. One of them that I noticed, I follow this guy on Twitter. I've spoken to him multiple times on podcasts. His name is Zuby. I believe he's originally from Dubai or something, or UAE, and he lived in, I don't know, Europe, maybe England for a while, and then he moved to America. The guy's pretty well traveled. And he says, like, he always posts about other places, and he goes, I don't think Americans realize how bad their food ingredients are. Like even in London and Britain that we make fun of for obvious reasons. No offense to English people, but, you know, Americans, England, we kind of, you know, say 1776, flex a little bit, but you look at the ingredients of all the food in England and it's like 4 ingredients. You look at the ingredients in America, it's like 30 ingredients. I mean, in my opinion, we're being softly poisoned. It's not going to like kill you right now, but it's like you eat a bunch of shit for 30 years and nobody realizes. That's why everybody in America is so fat. Why do you think everybody's so fat? America is big pharma capital of the world. Everyone's just shoving pills down their throat, getting obese. Mysteriously, everybody's getting all these chronic illnesses and stuff. And it's like, America's a mess. But it never changes because, just to be honest, not to offend the slow people on Facebook, Democrats don't give a shit. And Trump doesn't give a shit. So until you give a shit, nothing's going to change. And that's not a knock on Trump and what he does. It's just like culture shifts around people who give a shit. If you don't give a shit and you're just like an obese sports fan, like, Trump, it's like, it's never going to change. And we're eating shit, and your kids are going to eat shit, and your kids are going to eat shit, and diseases are going to keep going up, and people are going to be fat. And that's not normal. This isn't normal. You look at a picture, they have this picture going around Facebook. It always goes viral, and it's like the world's fattest man in like 1890. And then like the comment says like, this person's not even the fattest person in my house. Or it says like, I've seen 5 people fatter than this when I walked into a Walmart. And it's funny. I'll probably post it later today because it is funny. But at the same time, it's kind of not funny that millions of our people are more obese than a freak show clown in 1990 that got paid to be that fat. Like, it's actually not funny for a nation to be this like weak and lethargic and, you know, out of shape and unhealthy. You want Make America Great Again should be Make America Healthy Again. But we don't get healthy because you're stuck in the Trump versus the court case or left versus the right. And there's never a time to talk about this because they control us with the narrative around Trump. I'm not saying not to vote for him. Vote for him, vote all Republican, but understand this country changes when we care about stuff. So that's the sort of thing when I'm talking about this, there's certain plots that go deeper. I know, like, you know, the dumbest thing, like I'll just walk through like dumb thought processes. Like, the dumbest thing that you could think is like left wing beats right wing. And it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, there's 10,000 genders and let's all be depressed and let's vote for Joe Biden or Bernie. It's like, yeah, that's pretty dumb. You know, the left is wrong about a lot. Like they're off. But then it's like you move to the next stage and it's like, oh, I'm a normal Republican. I like Lindsey Graham and George Bush. And it's like, yeah, that's really stupid too. And then you move to the next thing and it's like, I like Donald Trump and he's fighting the deep state. It's like, getting warmer. Yeah, that's better. But then it's like you get even further and then you realize there's certain donors that control Trump. There's certain lobbyists that control Trump. There's certain people that he hires. And if you want to be intelligent, you got to figure out, why is he hiring these people? And once you figure it out, you know, you could talk, but if you never figure that out, if you're on the last stage of like, let's just run circles around him for 5 years. And then, you know, you're like, oh no, we ended in a lockdown. And I think it's because they want him to do this. And it's like, sure, you could think that, but if you do enough research, you could figure out that, you know, there's certain big pharmaceuticals kind of swallowed up Trump's campaign. And that's a huge reason that, you know, he ended up losing. But also, if you want to take it even wider, almost every country in the world did it. Certain African leaders didn't do it. I think the one leader of like that country next to Russia didn't do it. Even Russia did a lot of the stuff. Every country's selling a vaccine. They got a Chinese vaccine, Russian vaccine, American vaccine. I mean, almost every country did it, which is another conspiracy in itself. But in general, nothing will. That's where I'm coming to politics, where if I wanted to just make money on people, sometimes people say to me like, oh, you just do this for money. You just hate on Trump. I'm not hating. I'm doing journalism and news analysis. If you want a fanboy of a politician, there's thousands of those. I'm one of the few, you know, I could name a few that do actual journalism. Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy, you know, it's like, there's only a few that I could even think of that even attempt to do somewhat journalism. Everyone else is just like a sports fan of a politician, which is fine. But, you know, I understand why people do what they do as well, because when you have a plot and a theme and it's like you're, you know, it's like 24-hour news. I got to have a big thing today to get it's more profitable to do that. Like for me, people think I'm just, oh, I'm making so much money now because I just talk about Trump. I make less money than I did when I did the other way. But also, to be honest, I did the best probably during the pandemic. Because not a lot of people were doing it. Everybody was stuck at home. Everybody was trying to get their way out. And fortunately or unfortunately, I think I was one of the few that actually understood what was going on and did good breakdown videos. So it's not like this is a huge, like it's way more profitable to like just be like Trump, Trump, Trump and sell Trump merch. It's not profitable for me to do this. That's why it's not like a business decision. I'm just telling you the truth. For me, I see what's going on in the country. I got more clips to play, but it's like, I see that the border's wide open. It disgusts me. I see the fact that the food quality in America is tainted and people don't even seem to notice. It disgusts me. Every time I watch sports, because I like sports, it disgusts me. There's pharmaceutical ads all over the place. Sky Rizzy, la, 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 la. Side effects, la, 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 la. The side effects are worse on all the pharmaceutical commercials, la, 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 la. Listen to 15 side effects, and then we're going to wonder why all our family members have diseases that no one had. It's like, it's disgusting. This nation is falling apart, and it pisses me off every time I do everything. But I try to stay, you know, positive and not like let it like ruin my life. I try to think that I have a good life, but in general, it's like, I see what's going on to the country. I see what's going on to our people. I see the border. I see Joe Biden. I see the foreign wars. I see the foreign aid. I see the inflation. But when I really do analysis and journalism to try to trace it to the root, yeah, Joe Biden sucks, but he's not even running his own administration. And the truth is, both parties are in on it. Not just Mike Johnson and Lindsey Graham, kind of Trump too. I'm not saying to not vote for him, but it's like, that's kind of the truth. And things change when people figure this stuff out. So when Thomas Massie comes out and explains this, whether you're pro-Israel, critical of Israel, think we should give them all the money in the world, think we should defend them and fight, Palestine and kill women and children, or whatever you think you need to do in order to win the war. Even if you're at that point, if you're halfway intelligent, you should want to learn how the Israel lobby works. Thomas Massie's explaining it. And when all these other people say like, oh, Russia, like, is Russia controlling American politics? No, Russia has very little influence in America. They're like, oh, Russia has, the RT news. It's like, that pales in comparison to liberal news and, for other foreign news. Like, it pales in comparison. They blame Russia because they want to start a war with Russia. They blame China because China, one, does have a lot of influence, but also look who doesn't like China. I've said this on my last couple live streams, but George Soros says, people talk about George Soros, go Google George Soros talking about Xi Jinping and China. George Soros says that Xi Jinping and China are the number one threat to open societies. So I'm just giving you accurate analysis. When all these people say, oh, China and George Soros, listen, George Soros funds a lot of liberal things all over the world. He funds a lot of liberal causes. The president of that country I think it was Slovakia, where that guy almost got assassinated, he name dropped George Soros after he got out. He said, hey, the George Soros funded media needs to chill out a little bit. Like, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but Robert Fico, his name is, look into that. I might do a video about it later this weekend. But in general, I'm not saying George Soros doesn't fund a lot of things, but if George Soros was working with China, why would he say China is the number one threat? It's because George Soros sees China as a threat. It doesn't mean China's your best friend. Just take it for what it is and learn it. Republicans see China as a threat. The left sees China as a threat. Vivek sees China as a threat, even though he used to fly over there for his little pharmaceutical press conferences or whatever, like little, meet and greets or whatever he was doing. But in general, it's like, why? Why is and I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying that they're our best friend, because they're not. But it's like, there's a lobby and an influential group that influences America times 10 of China. Yeah, China has a lot of influence. Yeah, they're buying up farmland. Yeah, they're buying up real estate. Yes, they're, they move quietly and, buy a lot of stuff in America. But there's a group that does 20 times as much that's getting speech laws passed in America that you can't even talk about. So, you might want to learn about it regardless of what you think, because then you could know how it works. It's just interesting. Anyway, let me play the last 4 clips and then we'll keep it moving.
Well, for sure. And by the way, I think there are probably a lot of things that APAC is for that I'm for, and Farm Bureau, NRA, same thing. But
right.
The idea of a foreign government playing in our political campaigns openly
in that they're showing you they're doing it, but opaquely in that you can't track it because they're not registered.
Is there any other Republican who has your views on this?
Well, I have Republicans who come to me on the floor and say, I wish I could vote with you today. Yours is the right vote, but I would just take too much flack back home. And I have Republicans who come to me and say, that's wrong what APAC is doing to you. Let me talk to my APAC person.
We're going to get into that in a second, but he says that there's people that come to him and say, your vote is right, but I can't vote that way. Think about that. You're voting the way I believe, but I can't do it. Why? If you look at some of these Israel packages or even like Israel speech law packages, disguised behind an anti-Semitism bill, sometimes Thomas Massie's the only one who votes against it. So if you're another Republican and you agree with Thomas Massie and you're a phony like all of them, you say to yourself, well, he's the right vote, but what do I gain for voting no? It's not going to stop the bill. I'm going to be outed. Everybody's going to see that I voted no. APAC's going to probably slander me. The media is going to slander me. Everybody's going to call me anti-Semitic. So it's just not worth it. And, in conservative media, it's the same thing. I have dozens of people who agree with me, but they can't vocalize it, or they can't focus on that topic because then they couldn't work at certain news organizations like Candace and Daily Wire. I mean, that's an interesting one where they could say this or that, but when you start asking why did you want to part ways with Candace, it's like they can't give you a real straight answer. It's like, oh, the crisis king thing that Andrew Klavan said, and then Jeremy Boring went from saying we pay Candace for her views, not ours, to being like, well, yeah, I'm not going to pay somebody that says things like, so it's like, okay, everyone has a line. Where's your line? Just be honest about it. So the same thing that Thomas Massie is saying in Congress, where everyone who votes for these bills doesn't necessarily agree with them. They're afraid of being called anti-Semitic. It's the same thing in conservative media. I've had the same experience as Thomas Massie. There's dozens of people that it's not just that they're afraid of being called anti-Semitic. It's just that most Republican media is Zionist first, in the sense of you can't work there. They will Candace Owens you if you ever come out and say America first. Like, I don't know about the foreign aid, or at least like, I don't know about these speech laws. And like, yeah, like, Matt Walsh kind of did it and he's still at Daily Wire, but it took him 5 years. These were obvious in 2019. You think only I know about this? This is a funny part too. People be like, oh, maybe he just didn't know till 2024. Guys, these people do politics every day. They know everything. You know what I'm saying? They just don't want to talk about it until they have to. And once the threshold comes that everybody talks about it, then they're, oh, I got to talk about this or else I'm going to look fake. Like, that's what a lot of people think. They're not thinking, what do I believe? What do I think is important? They're thinking like, what should I do? Because I don't want to and for some people, they're playing a calculated game. Like Matt Walsh, he already has like the LGBTQ plus XYZ, Justin Trudeau plus QQQ, LGBTQQQ, and non-LGBTQ and community, getting pissed at him all the time. So maybe he's like, you know what? I already got enough enemies or whatever. I don't need to cover this because then, like I got enough to deal with. Maybe, and maybe there's a moral or valid reason for it, but just remember that when a lot of people seem like they won't talk about this stuff, it's not because they don't know. It's just not profitable to know. And I do want to say, just like politicians who are taking donor money, like a lot of politicians will be like, oh, I support that war. Okay, for free? Or are you getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it? Because, I've explained this before. For myself, I probably have less money than a lot of politicians, unfortunately, because I don't sell out to donors. But anyway, like you think, oh, they're just taking $50,000. $50,000? Do you know how much people of my caliber or higher or that have more influence than me, even like how much they're charging for an ad? Like I'm not going to, I don't know who's charging what, but like say somebody that's like bigger than me and they're like, I'll charge 20,000 or 10,000 for an ad. That's what it is. You pay them and then they spout out your company. So it's like, whether it's a foreign lobby or military industrial complex or Raytheon or big pharma, like even if they're taking 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 or 500,000, that's what it is. It's an advertisement. Like you don't take the money and then go against it. It would be like if I took $50,000 to be like, yeah, I'll promote your thing 5 times or 10 times. And then I take the money and I'm like, actually, I hate your company. Like you can't do that. That's what politicians are doing. It's just people are so caught up in the left right paradigm that they don't want to admit that their favorite politicians might do that, but that's absolutely what they're doing. So, people like Thomas Massie know because they're in Washington and so many people come up to them and be like, you're right. Okay, if I'm right, then why don't you vote with me? I can't afford it for my next election because I need the donor money and I can't lose the donor money. And I also can't have this powerful lobby running ads against me. I think APAC ran a couple $100,000 of ads versus Thomas Massie because he's the only one, not 100, not 5, not 2, 1. He's the only Republican who votes against these anti-Semitism bills. And some of them include speech legislation that people will say it's not true. Listen to him explain it in a second because he does a good job.
By the way, everybody but me has an APAC person.
What does that mean, an APAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your APAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for APAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are, firmly embedded in APAC. And
every member has something like this?
I don't know how it works on the Democrat side, but that's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to DC, you go have lunch with them and they've got your cell number and you have conversations with them. So I've had
that's absolutely crazy.
I've had 4 members of Congress say, I'll talk to my APAC person.
So he's saying that every Republican besides him or at least most of them, I don't know what he's suggesting, has an APAC person, which is basically a person that they talk to that is essentially, they're connect on foreign lobbying or lobbying on behalf of a foreign group or their decisions in America on behalf of a foreign country that they constantly communicate with. And Thomas will say, when they do Thomas Massie dirty, sometimes the people will come to him and say, hey, they're really doing messed up stuff. Let me call my guy and see if we can get him to stop like smearing you in the press or whatever they're doing.
And it's literally what we call them, my APAC guy. I'll talk to my APAC guy and see if I can get him to, dial those ads back.
Why have I never heard this before?
It doesn't benefit anybody. Why would they want to tell their constituents that they've basically got a buddy system with somebody who's representing a foreign country? It doesn't benefit the congressman for people to know that, so they're not going to tell you that.
Have you seen any other country do anything like this? Like
No.
Russia obviously determines the outcome of our elections. We keep hearing that.
So he talks about it in a second, but Tucker Carlson's been in media in America and overseas. I mean, working for America, I think, for decades now. He claims, and I believe him, that he's never heard this. I mean, I would think he's had to have heard of it, to be honest, but maybe never so clearly. I'm sure he's known about the influence. And Thomas Massie's like, yeah, this is what's going on with everybody. And Tucker's like, why have I never heard that? He's like, well, who would tell you that? Because this is my thing. If you really care about a country and a people, then you don't need to take money to do it. And I saw right through this during the pandemic because according to news I was getting, Israel was under a strict lockdown, like America, perhaps even stricter at some points, maybe not as strict. I don't know. Where were all these people that stand in front of the Jewish Star at donor meetings and say, oh, I'm going to defend Israel and I love the Jewish people and we're fighting anti-Semitism? Where were these people when Israel was actually being mistreated? I didn't see any of them speak out against the lockdown measures over there. And most Republicans didn't really do much in America. So why would they do something over there? So that just shows me that they don't actually care about people there. They care about donor money. Whenever somebody, I do this new game just for my own amusement. And because of Twitter, I think it's been a lot more transparent. Whenever a congressman just randomly tweets one day, I stand with Israel, just so you know, there's this account called APAC Tracker where then they post how much money they've taken from APAC. Some of the people, $500,000, $300,000. So it's like, do you stand with them for free? No. Like when I stand on something, it's like, I believe it. It's not like I'm being paid to believe it. You can't find any of these people that actually believe that don't get paid for it. They're all taking money. So it's like, they'll tell you that, oh yeah, this is just what I really believe. And then Thomas Massie's like, no. There's a whole game going on behind the scenes that nobody really knows. All right, here's the last clip about other countries and their influence in America. We'll talk about it for a little, and then we'll keep it under an hour. That sounds good.
Does anyone have a Putin guy that they talk to?
Not only do they not have a Putin guy, look, they don't have a Britain guy. They don't have an Australian guy. They don't have a Germany dude. Like, it's the only country that does this, that has somebody that like uniformly, I guarantee there's some spreadsheet at APAC where the APAC dude who's matched up with the congressman is there, and then all the congressman's votes on the issue. Oh, has the congressman been to Israel? They pay for trips for congressmen and their spouses to go to Israel. I'm not the only Republican who hasn't taken the APAC trip to Israel, but I'm probably one of a dozen that hasn't taken that trip, and the other ones just haven't got.
Interesting stuff. I know, like he's talking about the trip. They do this in Republican media too. People will be like, do you want to take a trip to Israel? Which it sounds nice, but I got offered the trip myself at one point. I'm not going to say who told me it, but it's another influencer that mysteriously has really interesting takes on this stuff. But anyway, they texted me one time and they were like, do you want to take a trip to Israel? And the trip was with another, big poster online. I would say a big conservative page. One of them was somebody who is now a congressperson. At the time they weren't, but now they're a congressperson. And they're like, we're doing this influencer trip to Israel. Do you want to go? No, it wasn't Roseanne. Roseanne's never done that. We just hang out and kick it. She's never, that's not who it was. But anyway, And I said at the time, I didn't even know I didn't know much about Israel and Palestine and like foreign policy. I didn't even know we were giving them donor money. I didn't know what APAC was. So I said no for none of these reasons. Just my instinct told me, because I think they told me, do you want to go to Israel and meet with the Knesset or the government of Israel? And I was like, not really. No, like I wanted to go to Israel. I just didn't want to go as like a political, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm the type, like if I go travel the world, I'm not trying to be a politician. So like, why would I go to this country and like meet with the government? To me, that just seemed kind of like too much. I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, but if you want to be a politician or you want to be somebody, it's like, yeah, you go meet with the government. But me personally, I'm like, I want to go to Israel, but I just want to go as a spectator and a tourist. I just want to get lit in Tel Aviv and like just hang out and eat like Middle Eastern food. I'm not trying to meet with the government. That sounds a little much. So I said no. Never heard about it again. I don't know who went. I don't really care. I'm just saying what he's saying in politics, it happens in media as well. And once you don't do certain things, like I've had my own experiences. I don't want to talk too much because I've said it probably in other podcasts, but like once you notice certain things and won't play certain games, doors start to close in your face. So I think like with certain people, you don't see this because it's not like they're saying it on their podcast or whatever at their speech. But in general, it's like, I was in 2018, 2019, I got invited to the White House. I, got around to certain places. And once I started realizing the speech laws, it was like, yeah, no, sorry. Someone said YouTube shut it down. We're back. What? Maybe it was it the clips? I don't know. Are we on YouTube? Sorry about that. If it did shut down, hopefully. Anyway, when did it shut down? Whatever. Did he know he was gone? Stream unsuspended. They do that sometimes when I play clips. That's why, if you guys notice, I try to speed up clips sometimes and like chop them into like 15-second clips. It's just annoying because when it comes to these clips, it's smarter business wise to like, just speed them up. But it's like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I'd rather people just hear it in full context instead of like chopping it into 1,000 clips. But that's what you got to do. Yeah, it's probably, to be honest, it probably has nothing to do with like, I know you guys are going to think it's because I'm talking about this, but to be fair, it's probably just the clips of Tucker Carlson. This has happened in other Tucker Carlson things. Like I got to chop them into like 30-second clips instead of like, 40-second clips. Like that's the difference. And I was talking about the trip. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird timing, but I don't like to be the boy who cried wolf. So when I say certain things, I like to mean them. One thing I noticed on Twitter is like I'll see people complaining about being shadow banned, and Twitter doesn't really shadow ban that much. So it's like people are lying. But anyway, they'll show and they'll be like, look, my stats are down. I'm being censored. And it's like they have like 50% less viewership than they had last week. As somebody that gets hundreds of millions of impressions on X, it's not always stagnant. You know what I'm saying? Like people know that nobody knows social media. Like I come from a different spot where one, I know because I've done it for myself. But before I did it for myself, I did social media for like 10 years. So I consider myself an expert. Sometimes I do consulting for it. Like I know, I'll tell you when I got censored. I'll tell you why I got censored. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to be like, oh, they're coming after me. Donate to me. I'll tell you straight. If they're doing that, I'll tell you. If they're not, they're not. So many people, and I'm not going to name names, but on X, they'll be like, look, I reached 30 million people this week. And last week I reached 40 million people. Oh, I'm down, 25%. It's like that happens. It's not like you reach the same amount of people every week. Some weeks it goes up 200%. Other weeks it doesn't. Like it's not always shadow banning. It's like, what are you posting? Did it go viral? Did a video clip last week get 10 million views and this week you only got 1 million views? Like that's normal. So like as a creator, I just can't stand when people are like, oh, they got me. Cause like, I'll tell you the truth. Maybe it was the content, but most likely it's the Tucker Carlson clips and it has nothing to do with the topic. It could have been about anything. Now, when something really happens, now you'll believe me because I'm not lying. But everybody else like, oh man, I'm down 35% this week. Dang, Elon's coming after me. And it's like, do you think that, like if you've ever run a business, like my shop doesn't sell the same amount all the time and it sells more in certain months. And when I run specials, like it's not like stagnant. Oh, it went down 50% this week. Oh, they're coming after me. It's like, no, that's how things go like this, especially based on what you post. I don't, I know exactly on every media platform what's happening to me. I don't like make it up. But anyway, someone said someone at YouTube is going to get red pilled if they are. I don't know what you're talking about, but someone said these are the ones that I have a question to Facebook boomers that aren't doing this, because we love the boomers here. Why do you type in all caps? Like, you look crazy when you do that. Some lady named Betty, I'm going to read your thing and I'm going to read it like you're screaming, because that's what I see when you type in all caps. It seems like you're screaming at me. Okay. Betty on Facebook says, these are the ones that are genuine. You know where you stand with people like these, but with politicians a lot. It's like, why the all caps? I don't know. Oh, you're saying you're refreshing, anomaly, atomic anomaly. Thank you. Okay. I guess you like me. I'm not trying to be mean since you like me, but I don't know. The all caps, I feel like you're yelling at me. You're like, woo. Maybe it's like, we're at Coachella and I'm just crushing on stage and you're like, atomic anomaly, you're crushing. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. Betty, we'll take it to the top. Let's go. Yeah, anyway, sorry about that. Yeah, we got the bass boomers out here. Yeah, the caps kind of throws me off, but thank you for the compliments. Someone said I'm in caps because I like to party. There's nothing wrong with that. It's technically Friday night. Who am I to ruin a good time? But just to wrap it up, I thought that was one of the more important interviews of the year. This happens in media, not just politics. And I just want to be clear, because there's going to be all types of people on the left, on the right, people that go too far or say too much or you don't like or this or that. And the comment said this. I'm speaking from what I think. I can't speak for everyone else. America needs to serve America first. They don't do that. The Democrats don't do that. The Republicans don't do that. They've taken advantage of us. I think America was a place where people were coming from other parts of the world, and they got us to buy into this concept of being American. Leave your nationality behind and be American. Okay. But then, the favor wasn't returned by the government, and the military industrial complex took advantage of us. And then you fast forward, it seems like the people running our country absolutely hate us. And it's gotten so bad that the left really hates us and the right just like actually hates us too, but they just pretend like they don't, and they wear cowboy hats and they're like, yeah, patriots. And it's like, what's going on in this country? This is not everything. There's a lot of reasons for this. I could probably go down the list, but I do think that lobbying is a huge reason for it. Like, if big money pours into both parties and it tells them what to think about certain topics, then certain topics will supersede what they actually think. Like, if I ever ran for politics, I probably won't. I don't think I would take money from like anybody. I don't know. I would try not to. I don't really know how it works, but if I took money from like the pharmaceutical industry, I would never, because then it's like, what do you want from me? If I took money from a foreign lobby or even a domestic lobby, it's like, what do you want for the money that you're giving me, or a donor that gives me $1 million? So it would be tough. I think Thomas Massie does a good job and a few others try to, but in general, it's like, that's what's going on in Washington. And, Thomas Massie is giving people an insight into the Israel lobby, which is one that doesn't really get talked about on the right. I think the left wing understands it, but they're also wrong about a lot of stuff. So nobody listens to them, because like, you look at the left and you're like, well, they're not going to run the city properly. They don't know what they're talking about. You listen to the Macklemore song and he's like APAC and white privilege. And the people are like, nah, I'm not trying to hear that. It's like, and then on the right, when people talk about this topic, they're usually kicked out. Like, they get Candace Owens, and people try to be like, oh, that's too far. Like, too far for what? What did she say? I mean, she said a lot of things that are like too far for like normal people. Like, most, normies are not trying to hear that, like, the guy in France is dating a tranny. Like, that's not something that you're going to see on Fox News, but that's just kind of like who Candace has always been. And I never even look at those videos because it doesn't really affect me, but it's kind of funny to talk about, isn't it? Anyway, it's like she's gone too far on every topic, but then it's like that topic, it was like too, why is it too far? What did she say? Like, what part of it, and I think that there is a huge lobby in that category. And this is what I'll leave you guys on is, America has to come first. in Israel, they make sure that they don't have dual loyalty. They make sure that their cabinet is serving them. In other countries, well, not every country is really being run well, so I'm not going to speak on every country, but in America, it's not hate to want your politicians to serve you first. It's not hate. It's not left wing. It's not too far right. It's just the truth. We need Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, Nancy Pelosi. That's a stretch, but all these people, they should be focused on America. What are they doing? Why are they sending so much money to Ukraine? Why are they sending so much money to Israel? And then they act like inflation's not even happening. Meanwhile, inflation is happening and crime is going up for multiple reasons. That's one of them. I'm not going to say it's the only reason, but it's like this country is suffering and it seems like almost no one cares. And the Republicans that do care, they give us lip service, but they don't always really come through. So in order to backtrack and try to figure out why this is happening, you got to look at all the reasons. And I think that lobbying and donor money is a huge reason. I'll end on this note as well. Donald Trump, I believe, is better than Joe Biden. He seems more authentic. I think he'll pick better judges. He gives you more gems in an interview. Everybody has reasons for liking Trump more than Biden. Why would you like a Mitt Romney or a Joe Biden? They're fake. Trump, he gives you more truth than they'll ever give you. So people like Trump. Makes sense. Here's the thing, though. He's a good talker. He's a good comedian. You want to pay attention to how things work, because if things don't go his way, it's not always like, oh, the deep state did this to Trump. It's also like they paid Trump. You know what I'm saying? Like they pay off politicians. Like they gave him, you don't have to call it the deep state, but major, whatever you want to call it, major donors are doling out hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions. Do you know how much $100 million does? Why would someone want to give someone $100 million? $100 million. They want something in return. If you read the press, not the fake press, but if you really get through it and weave through it and have good discernment, you realize that it's pay to play. It's like, we're going to give Trump all this and then we get something out of it. So this is all I'm saying. If he picks a vice president that you hate, like Marco Rubio or Elise Stefanik or Tim Scott, consider the fact that there's a transaction going on. And this is the problem with Washington. It's not Trump is not the problem. It's the fact that everyone's doing transactions. They're just not being honest about it, because that's what a politician is. They're never going to tell you, yeah, I'm taking money to do this, because then everybody would hate them. So it's like on the left and the right, they get the left to fight the right to fight the left. Trump says this, they say that. That's the whole game that they're playing in order so none of their people ever realize that they're doing a lot of the same stuff. So that's what this is about. It's not about hating another country. It's not about, any of that stuff that they're going to say it's about. It's about loving and respecting your country first and realizing, regardless of what ethnicity or religion you are, everybody notices, at least the people that are smart and not completely stupid, that this country is falling apart. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to serve your nation first, because the problem in Washington is like, both parties are playing games. And to think that this is all going to go away when Trump wins, if he wins, it's not. And we got to start figuring out why. And a lot of the people that he's endorsing, they suck. They're going to turn into Mitt Romney. So it's like there's a lot of games being played. And I personally believe the political solution is when enough people stop fighting and figure this stuff out. I think it's the only way it's going to work, because they have eternal tricks and games to run people in circles, but it takes you telling the truth to yourself. It's not a black pill. It's not pessimistic. I'm not dooming and glooming, just the truth. And it is optimistic if you're not like totally scared of this or whatever. Just figure it out, because then the games won't work as much. And I do believe, although there are some weird trends in this country, that this is starting to happen over time, because as things get worse and weirder, it just becomes more obvious. I think, a lot of people question the pharmaceutical industry, but not as many that do now. Why do more people not believe big pharma now? Well, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, that'll wake you up, if you didn't figure it out before then. So I do see these things happening. Appreciate you guys. Check out my shop real quick. I think some of the shirts, they're under 20 or 15. There's not very many left. So if you wanted any of this stuff, get it now. I'll be back tomorrow with 1 or 2 videos, perhaps, to make up for earlier this week. I had some stuff going on. Appreciate you. God bless you. Let me know what you think of this video. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, Stay Blessed long sleeve, God is Great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/rare.